Hey there, cats and kitties. I am the Blues Man, Johnny Blues, and with this video, we discuss my thoughts on Series 10, Episode 11 of Doctor Who, World Enough and Time. And holy hell, man, this episode gutted me. It absolutely gutted me. I hate, loathe, and despise the fate of Bill Potts, as we see transpires in this episode. Just in case you weren't aware, this is going to be completely spoilery, this discussion. If you haven't watched the episode already, click off the video now. I'm assuming you have if you're watching, so you'll be sticking with me, and let's continue to rock and roll with this. But I mean, this episode was such a point of conflict because there was such a beauty and a mesmerizing, entrancing quality to it that, as I've touched on a few times in these episode discussion videos covering Series 10, have hearkened back to me a lot of aspects of the classic series, most notably revolving around, in the case of this episode, the Fourth Doctor's Gothic horror era, where people are dying left, right, and center, and there's an uneasiness, a palpability to each of the stories. It's properly frightening and unsettling, and that's very much what this episode was from beginning to end. I mean, offsetting the entire affair by welcoming Missy into the fray as being a pseudo Doctor Who, at the start, just threw everything completely topsy-turvy and out the window from the beginning, from the get-go. And we're not that far along into the episode when Bill meets her demise, and for the hole that is popped through her, there's a hole left in my heart for not only Bill Potts, the character, but for Pearl Mackie herself. She was a breath of fresh air in this series. She is instantly one of my most beloved companions, or assistants, or expendables, as Missy would have it. She gets the little fourth wall breaking jab in there. Oh, this one's exposition, this one's the comic relief. Talking about Bill and Nardole respectively. But yeah, the direction, the cinematography of this episode were nothing less than spectacular. There was such an uneasy atmosphere. It was emotionally torrential, and I didn't expect to be so just gobsmacked by how soon into the episode Bill would be dispatched, how that would happen. I mean, the big gaping hole in her torso was horrifying. And interspersing all of those segments, those sequences, with calling back on the doctors assuring her at every step, at mentioning, even thinking about taking Missy out of the box and letting her roam free, guided, but see if she's really up to snuff with this actually turning good affair, this whole thing that she's been showcasing all throughout Series 10. Every step of that discussion, the doctor's like, it'll be okay. Within reason, I'll make sure you don't get killed. I'll make sure nothing happens to you. It is immediately ripped out of his hands, and he's reflecting back on that, as we see, because of this interspersal of scenes. And it's heartbreaking. Hearts-breaking, Especially, I mean, look at what has happened to this doctor. What happened with Clara, and I don't care what anybody says. As far as I'm concerned, Face the Raven is the real, true ending for the character of Clara. And it's very much the ending the Doctor is aware of. He's not aware of what came after that, all that hullabaloo that I could really take or leave with her and the Lady Me gallivanting off in space and time and whatever. That's been one of the chief complaints of the Moffat era, that nobody actually stays dead, nobody actually dies, and I have argued, devil's advocate, that that's not always the case. There have been times where people have died and stayed dead. Wasn't a gimmick or anything like that. They did not get resurrected later on, but it is a reoccurring thing. It has happened before. So on the one hand, I want to wring Moffat's neck for killing Bill off, for cyberizing her, creating a Cyberman out of her, arguably the first Cyberman, at least contained to this particular, colony vessel. But on the other hand, I want to wring his neck because I don't want him to bring her back. I love her character. I wish she wouldn't leave the show. I wish, we'd have continued adventures with her, but don't go back on this. You do that, I'm going to want to wring your neck that much harder. Because it's meaningful. That's the beauty, the bittersweet, beautiful agony, if you will, of this episode is we lost a character so immediately endeared to us. Her time was so fleeting with the Doctor, and it's all on the Doctor's shoulders, what he must be going through internally at that point. The shock, the remorse, the guilt, but then the added horror of Missy and dun dun dun, the return of John Sims' master. I'm going to start referring to my notes here just so I can try to condense a little more of this discussion. I liked the little nods playing around with the Doctor Who mythology. The big one at the start of the episode is, of course, Missy saying, I'm Doctor Who. Then going on to say, well, that's his real name. People come along and they say, well, who are you? He says, I'm the Doctor. Well, Doctor Who. And she's cutting to the chase, cutting to the quick of that, but she then insists that's his real name, and Doctor Who is his real name, and just wonderfully ripping off the bandage from that wound, that ages-old wound. Is he the Doctor? Is he Doctor Who? Going back to David Tennant, I remember he didn't want to take the role unless he was credited as the Doctor, whereas Eccleston had been credited as Doctor Who, and all this stuff. You go back to the Third Doctor era, you have novelizations and even one story where it's Doctor Who and the ... So, take it or leave it, but I love messing with the mind. I love messing with expectations and kind of, it opens the can of worms, you could say arguably, but then it also puts the cap back on that it's really to your own personal preference. It's either or. It's the Doctor or it's Doctor Who. However you want to refer to it, as long as we're talking about the same damn thing, what does it matter? But playing with the mythology along those lines, Missy's manipulations there, it kind of makes both cases, for either one being legitimate is what I'm getting at. And the Doctor uses his Venusian Aikido, going back to the Third Doctor era, speaking of John Pertwee, which I thought was absolutely hilarious and awesome. I did not expect him to suddenly flip the blue guy out of nowhere. and then adding to that the sort of matrixy, time stops because they're flipping back and forth between Bill and this, Razor character watching it all unfolding on the screen over months and years. Just trippy as all hell. And then as the Doctor goes into his explanation of what the hell's going on internally to this colony ship, we find the sonic screwdriver is, a marker too. He breaks it in half and there's a marker. Like, what do you go down to Tesco's and buy that? Is that the real sonic screwdriver? I don't know. But whatever the case, I love these little nods and these little warps, these timey-wimey warps, and playing around with, the established mythos, the mythology, because there's so much of it that doesn't quite align. And, but then again, there's so much of it that does. So, it's all timey-wimey. That's the brilliance of this show. They can do anything, go anywhere. They can completely rework something from the ground up. And that's a lot of what, going into this episode, I heard a lot of people were fearful of. That this was going to somehow, in its being the air quotes as coined by the Master toward the end of the episode, the genesis of the Cybermen, that it was going to somehow wipe out or completely make null and void the audio adventure with the Fifth Doctor and Nyssa spare parts. And arguably so, I don't think it did. I think both can coexist simultaneously. They're an offshoot of each other. They were basically aligning toward the same, destiny, the same penultimate destiny. It was going to be that way one way or the other, and they coexist. It's not one or the other, that kind of thing. At least is my estimation between World Enough and Time and Spare Parts by the end. Of course, we haven't seen The Doctor Falls yet as of the time of this recording. I don't know how it's going to, add that much more to this colonization ship full of Cybermen, different generational Cybermen, it seems, as well, which is trippy because it's all because of the timey-wiminess. How can you have modern, almost Cybus-era Cybermen and the more modern Series 8 and Series 9 Cybermen? Well, it's because the time is sped up at that end of the ship. Generation after generation after generation, upgrade after upgrade is happening in real time. Generations, multi-generations of Cybermen, all conflicting and meeting at the same time. It's just, that's what I'm talking about. The beauty, the awe, the splendor, that just getting me so excited as a Whovian. I mentioned in my notes, the Doctor begins his very probably final legitimate regeneration at the start of this episode, wearing full on, I might add, third Doctor, we're going back to the third Doctor all the time here, you know, John Pertwee style hair. It's like, you know, a giant plume, you know, atop his head. And but the most intriguing thing, talking about the Cybermen that struck out to me at this, is the snowy, icy tundra he's surrounded by. Maybe he's back on Mondas. Maybe it's the 10th planet. Maybe this is going to circle around to where the Christmas special might be going, his final episode, where there have been rumors about a certain actor playing a certain other incarnation of a certain Time Lord. And I don't know. I'm not going to speculate about any of that, but that could be how they come together. You know, maybe he's back on Mondas, right at the tail end of the 10th planet, where the first Doctor began his renewal soon thereafter. I don't know. You know, this could be how the pairing, you know, gets the band back together, so to speak. As well as in my notes, I have mentioned about the Master's disguise as this character Razor. I'm not gonna, you know, wear a mask myself and say, oh, he fooled me completely. No, he didn't fool me at all. I knew it was John Sim immediately. Just the shape of his face and the nose, I could detect it was a prosthetic. And I'm just, because I'm so interested in behind the scenes stuff and monster makeups and all that kind of stuff, you know, horror stuff and sci-fi stuff, I could immediately detect that this was, you know, a faux face mask that he was wearing. But I have to give him, that doesn't draw back at all, you know, the accolades I have to give him for his performance. Because he was thoroughly a different character. I mean, as far as the way he performed the character, you know, if I didn't know that was his face, if I didn't recognize his face through the makeup, just ever so slightly, I probably would have been gobsmacked that this was him. And the thing about his disguise, though, that I really love as a classic Whovian, a fan of the classic series, is it goes back to the Master of Disguise, you know, Delgado and things like that. There were a few times where he had a proper disguise that he would wear. I think he even pulled the wool over the Doctor's eyes once or twice with that, in effect. And I love the hearkening back to that quality in the Master. It's a brand new Master, you know, arguably so, with Missy and John Sim. I mean, they are the most modern incarnations, so to speak. You know, so you have that perfect flavor, a mixture of the different eras of the Master all coming to a head right there on screen, much as is the case with the multi-generational Cybermen, you know, that kind of thing. Speaking of the eeriness and the atmospheric aspect of the episode, when Bill has been wounded and she's revived and she's going around this hospital and you hear that constant, you know, monosyllabic pain, the guy who's experiencing the conversion and he's just pressing the button over and over again, and then they mute him. They don't do anything. They just mute him. He's in severe pain. Another guy, kill me, kill me, kill me. Offset the stability of the episode. You know, I mean, you're already falling on from Bill's being mortally wounded and killed right in front of you, horrifically so. Pain was exactly what I was experiencing. Pain and anguish. For this character, for this actress, you know, she thoroughly got me hook, line, and sinker, Pearl Mackie, with this performance. The shock, the horror, and then the being like a little girl lost, having to be taken up by the Master in his, you know, personification of Razor. It was a spectacular, mesmerizing, compelling, heartbreaking episode. And I always give accolades to the performers. I will again do so. Applauds to Peter Capaldi. Applauds to Matt Lucas. Applauds to Michelle Gomez. Applauds to John Sim. But above all, above and beyond all, Pearl, you just, not that you're ever going to see this, but you stole the show. And, you know, I can only but commemorate your companion's memory from this point on, because it was snuffed out too short, and so heartbreakingly and tragically so. And I will definitely be one of those among hopefully the many that will be missing Bill Potts from here on out. And so yeah, otherwise it'll be pretty much up to me on this. I'd love to hear from you guys in the comments below what you thought of this episode, World Enough in Time, Series 10, Episode 11. And I'll catch y'all later. Peace.